You're listening to Thunder Quack Podcast Network.
Hello there. Before we get into the episode, we just have a little, we got let's like a little ad, I guess. This is a little, but it's not like for some product you don't want or something like that. It's a little bit of self promotion. Uh, we've got an awesome thing to tell you about that Joe's been doing. A few awesome things actually that Joe's been doing. He's been working on some new art that's being released. So it's all Star Wars stuff. You guys are listening to this podcast because you are Star Wars fans and you're a fan of Joe, I hope. If you're listening to this, I don't know. I'm a fan of Joe.
Oh, you sweetheart.
And specifically, I'm a fan of Joe's incredible art. So, Joe, why don't you tell everybody about all this new stuff that's being released and where they can
Cool.
get it?
Well, first of all, thank you for the kind words. I will get you that $20 that I owe you for saying all those nice things. I'll shoot you a PayPal right after this. Yeah, so this past Tuesday, I had two new prints released with Acme Archives Ltd. And darkinkart.com. They are sister sites, so my art is actually on both of those. And it's really cool because one of them was Clone Wars and one of them was The Mandalorian Season 2. So the first one is called A Galaxy Divided. It is a limited color palette of blues and oranges depicting some of my favorite characters during the Clone Wars. And it ranges from early Clone Wars, where Obi-Wan is in his general armor with the cool shoulder bells and the chest armor and all that stuff. We got Ventress on there, Dooku's on there. And then it ranges all the way back to seasons. I shouldn't say ranges all the way back because it's very like early Clone Wars and late Clone Wars, really. But we've got Ahsoka's clone troopers on there. We've got Ahsoka herself in her Siege of Mandalore outfit. We've got Maul. It was basically a love letter to Clone Wars, the series. And I'm very excited about it. The other one that released this week was it's called Masterhood, and it's actually a scene that I've wanted to depict since I was about 8 years old, playing with my action figures, probably 1998, so that's closer to 12 years old. But the Dark Troopers versus Luke Skywalker, it was a scene that when it happened, I could not believe my eyes in the Mandalorian Season 2 finale. And it's something that I've wanted to depict on a print for a long time, just trying to figure out the right way to do it. And now was the time, apparently. So very excited that is also released. And there is one more kind of really big announcement for me, is that this week they announced all of the artists who are going to be appearing in the Celebration Europe art show next April. This April, less than a month away. So if you are attending the show, I did a exclusive print to be sold only at the show. It's a Tales of the Jedi piece. It depicts all 6 episodes. I tried to capture all 6 episodes and my favorite moments from the entire series. So it's a very Ahsoka Dooku centric print. So 2 Dookus this week for 2 Ahsokas, I guess. But they're on both, which is pretty crazy because I normally don't draw a lot of Dooku, and now suddenly he's on 2 of my prints released the same week. But yeah, so the pre-orders for those last from the 10th, which is this Friday at I believe noon Pacific time, to March 20th. Also noon Pacific time. So it's about 10 days. And something you want to keep in mind, I'm not trying to pressure you or rush anyone, but what's happening this time is because of the international differences, there are going to be some international taxes if you're buying any of the prints at the art show in London. So if you see any of the prints, not just mine, if you see any of the prints from the art show and you got to have them and you want to guarantee yourself one, the best way to do it is to pre-order in that window, and it's going to be at a cheaper price. So my print is going to be $40. It's standard European size A3 to make the Europeans happy. But it's very easy to find a frame here. I've imported A3 size frames many times. But yeah, it's going to be, my print is going to be 40 pounds at the show. So it is going to go out. That's going to translate to just shy of $50 USD here. So yeah, if you are interested in the Tales of the Jedi piece, you're going to be attending London. Please stop by the show. Even if you're not going to pick up the print, stop by. Let me know that you enjoy listening to me, Mike, Kyle, in the instances when we talk Bad Batch. Just come chill out, say hi. And
Yeah.
if you mention the show here, this show, I will make sure you have a freebie. You will not walk away empty-handed, but something cool. So please
Awesome.
do that. Please do
And
that.
I'll just give everybody the heads up because Joe he's not gonna brag, but listen, he's gonna sell out of these prints. Okay, they're gonna go. And so if you want one, the best way to make sure that you get one is to pre-order it ahead of time, and you have that added incentive of getting it for cheaper. So this is an ad in the sense that like Joe's got some stuff to sell, but it's also just like it's more of like a PSA of like, hey, heads up, Joe did some cool stuff. It's available now, and if you are going to be at Celebration Europe and you want to take advantage of the cheaper price and make sure that you get your print, that's the best way to do it. So yeah, definitely do that. And support as many of these awesome Star Wars artists as you can. There's some really great stuff in the show this year. It's a it I think it's a pretty killer showing, and that's saying a lot because Star Wars Celebration art show is usually a lot of really, really cool stuff. But I looked at this year and it's like there's a lot of Ahsoka though. There's a lot of Ahsoka
Yes.
this year.
Yes.
But like they picked they approved the Ahsoka pieces for a reason.
Correct.
This is Ahsoka's year, guys. But
Yeah, I just
yeah,
got to shout out three of my artist friends who I think have
totally.
the three best pieces in the show. Chrissy Chung, she's the headline artist for the art show. She's everybody's using her print as like the article thumbnail. She did this amazing Rosario Dawson Ahsoka coming out of the World Between Worlds. Man, I've seen her print. She's got foil on it. It looks amazing. It's so
Awesome.
cool. So if you're an Ahsoka fan, check that one out. Adam Schickling did maybe my favorite print of his that he's ever done, and he's done amazing work. But this year he did this awesome Bo-Katan tribute, and after this episode that we're going to talk about, that print is going to sell out because oh man, did he predict some cool elements to
Mhm.
incorporate in this. He's got the dark saber on there. He's got the Night of a Thousand Tears from when Mandalore was destroyed, which was from Book of Boba Fett. But somehow he's like, I'm going to include this on the Bo-Katan print because I feel like it's important. And then what happens. And so yeah, that print is incredible. It's like I said, it's probably my favorite one from him. And the other one I need to shout out is Christie's print, who depicted Ahsoka and Rex, and he's been working on this piece, no joke, for about 3 years, trying to figure out how to make it right. He wasn't sure if he was going to make it a celebration piece or if he was going to pitch it to Acme or what, but he's been working on it for so long, and he just depicts the friendship and the relationship between Ahsoka and Rex. And this print also is going to have a really cool, shiny, glassy, weird effect that he managed to put on it. It looks so good. I haven't seen it in person, but he took video of it, and so did Chrissy on their two prints. They look so cool. You gotta have them, and all three of theirs, including mine, are in that same A3 format. So we're kind of a little set together. It worked out pretty cool. And I guess
Perfect.
one more little cool thing to plug is that we're part of a little group that we like to call Kanji Collab. It's not Kanji Club, it's Kanji Collab for legal reasons. Um, but what a bunch of us did, so there's quite a few of us artists in that group, but all of us, not just the artists who were in the show, but anyone who was in Kanji Collab, we all put together a little mini series of postcards that are not for sale. You just come up and you can just take them, and there's 9 of them, and they're awesome. And there's the whole series, so you can get 2 of them at my table, 2 of them at Chris's, 2 of them at Adam's, 2 of them at Christie's table, and then we're gonna have another one in rotation every day just to make sure that everybody gets a chance to have a third one. But they're super cool. They're totally free, and I love them. I'm very proud of the little set that we put together. So definitely come and grab them. Come say hi and come grab a free postcard for sure too.
That's awesome. Cool. Well, that's it. That's it. That thus concludes our public service announcement for all of this awesome Star Wars art. And we now return you to your regularly scheduled Star Wars podcast.
Yay! Thanks for humoring me, guys. Hope to see you in London.
Hello there, and welcome back to Force Perspectives for the Mandalorian Season 3 episode. I guess it's chapter, what is this, 18?
Yes.
The Mines of Mandalore. I am one of your hosts, Michael Cohen, and joining me, as always, for our Mandalorian, well, I don't know, because it was Book of Boba Fett before, but you know what I mean, these live-action recaps. We've got the illustrious Joe Hogan.
Dude, I am so excited to talk about this episode with you today.
Can you even, listen, I last week we were like, what a great way to start this off, oh cool, we're setting the table, we're laying the foundation for all of these great stories that we're going to see throughout the season. Obviously he's going to be looking for things to bring IG-11 back so that he can go to Mandalore. And then in the second episode he's just like I love this because I've seen criticism of it already, of like, what was the point of the whole IG-11 thing? And it's like, the beginning of the episode, he goes to Peli and he says, "Hey, do you know where I can get one of these processors?" And she's like, I don't have it. But if you need a droid, just take R5." Right? And he's like, "Yeah, okay, I guess R5's fine." Right? Like, and it takes a little bit of convincing. She definitely like works him. But I love it because it was like, to me, it's actually, people are like, "Oh, well, that's weird because like, why introduce the IG-11 thing? It seems like they just didn't know what to do with that." I was like, no, this like actually feels like a very organic way to tell the story of like, he thought that he was setting off on this big quest to go restore IG-11, and instead R5 is there, and it's like, and it ends up actually being like nothing anyways because the planet's not poisoned. So I mean, hey, this is a spoiler podcast. If you are worried about spoilers, I'm sorry. We're 12, no, we're not even 12 minutes in, we're like 2 minutes in, and I'm already spoiling the heck out of the episode. But yeah, from here forward, more spoilers. I But yeah, it ended up being like a total non-issue, which I love because I feel like it was just like a bit of it was almost like a bait and switch of like, oh my man, we got so much ahead of us before we get to this. And then like by the end of this episode, Buddy's bathing in the living waters under Mandalore, and you're like, okay, so I guess that's that. But that is not that. That is not that at all. And both Bad Batch and this episode of Mandalorian are like, cool, great episode. I had so much fun. Well, maybe Bad Batch not so much fun, but what a fantastic episode. And then the last like 30 seconds are like, "Oh, you ain't seen nothing yet, pal." And are just like, just buckle up for the rest of this season. Because yeah, the way that this episode ends, we'll save it. I don't want to like jump right to the end and talk about it, but we'll get there.
We are getting spoiled between last week and this, and I don't mean spoiled in the
no,
like plot way. Like, man, 2 great episodes 2 weeks in a row.
yeah, they are treating us right. It's so good. It's so good. But let's talk about the beginning of this episode. Let's talk about
Please, I'm so excited.
Boonta Eve,
Oh my
baby.
god, I'm so excited. It was so cool.
Now, here's the thing. I've heard this from a few people. I've seen this in the online chatter. Boonta Eve, how come we didn't see any pod racing? We're not in Mos Espa. We're in Mos Eisley. We're Mos Eisley.
Cool. And there was racing going on.
There was racing happening. There was street racing happening in the streets of Mos Eisley. A couple of speeders. But yeah, we're not in Mos Espa, so
Right.
we don't get to see
Right.
pod racing unless we're
Right.
in Mos Espa.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought that was one of those things of like, I was like, ooh, I'm the smart Star Wars fan this week. Because everybody, obviously we hear Boonta Eve and immediately we think of the Boonta Eve classic and all of that. But you know what bums me out? In the Phantom Menace, like clearly we just missed the party. Like either before or after Boonta Eve. Or I don't know, maybe in Mos Espa they're a little bit more chill about it, but in Mos Eisley they like let loose on Boonta Eve. But I love it. I just love that we're gonna like build out the lore of this a little bit, and then just the visuals of it, man. Like, look, I there are so many people online who want to criticize stuff in this show, and like say it's not Andor and whatever other stupid arguments they have. But I say that because like the beginning of this episode is just, it starts off just totally fun, and then we get the moment of them leaving Tatooine in the midst of these fireworks, and it's just like, it's just wonder. The 2 weeks in a row, we just get Grogu in that N1 looking out that window at something that's just magic, right? As they fly out of Mos Eisley with these fireworks going off around them, and it's just like, I don't know. I don't understand what Star Wars fans are looking for if this ain't it. You know what I mean? Like, we
Yeah.
got fun characters that we love, and I know mileage varies on Pelimato, but she is one of my favorite Star
I
Wars
love
characters.
that character.
Full stop,
Every time
right?
she shows up, I'm so excited
Look,
because
the
I love her.
the dream that I have that fills me with such like vigor and intensity at the idea of like maybe one day Pelly and Hondo will share screen time
Oh
together.
my god!
Because can you imagine the two of
Don't,
them
don't.
just like, I don't even like, just think about it. Just think about it, right? It would be so good. I But yeah, it's like I just love our little check-ins with her. Where's my little guy? Like it's so good. I guys should listen to her purr, like everything that Pelly said at the beginning of this episode, the way she's grifting people, and it's like it's a Bunta Eve, all the idiots are out, like all the schmucks are out.
It's ripe for the picking.
Yeah, I love it. I love her character. She is the Star Wars everyman, right? Like she's just a blue collar, just this wonderful, amazing person in Mos Eisley, the hive of scum and villainy, just trying to make it. She's just trying to live a decently comfortable life, uh, working on ships and speeders with her droids, and whatever she's got to do that, that's what she's gonna do. I love it, and just like the way that Din trusts her, even as he knows that he's kind of being grifted, but he's like, nah, okay, fine. Like, yeah, the N1 is pretty good. Like, it just fantastic. I don't know. I'd say like there's that. There's the fireworks. There's the fact that like we're gonna drop Boonta Eve as a little Easter egg for people. And then we're gonna go straight to Mandalore. R5's on the mission.
Dude,
But
can I
though,
just I am
go ahead.
so happy R5 finally gets his little adventure, even
Yeah,
though he doesn't want one. I love that he's a polar opposite of R2D2.
yeah.
I'm
Uh,
so like it's of course he has to be, right? He can't just be R2D2. He has to be that like cowardly, because like Mando's super brave and Grogu is, kind of, he's aware, but he's not totally aware of everything that's going on. So of course you need that cowardly little droid to even out I love it. I'm so happy. I know I'm
it's
just gushing,
yeah.
just babbling right now, really. I love the dynamic of the three of them already.
Well, we kind of have the dynamic of Astro Droids is like you've got R2, who is obviously the OG and he's the template, right?
Mhm.
So then you end up with Chopper, who's the next main one
Yeah.
that like goes the other way, right? Like and
Mhm.
as they said when Rebels was coming out, if R2 is Lassie, right? Like R2 is like your loyal man's best friend dog, right? Then Chopper is a cat. And immediately in season 1 we got Chopper in like every opportunity that he has to screw over another droid, push him off a cliff or out a airlock or anything. Like he's that's what he's going to do, especially those Imperial ones, right?
Mhm.
Like he doesn't care. He is malicious and evil, but on our
A
side,
war
so we're
criminal,
okay.
really.
Yeah, yeah. Committing droid genocide left, right, and center. And then a couple years later we get BB-8, who is really like BB-8's got his own personality for sure, but BB-8, let's be honest, is R2 Jr., right? Like
Yeah.
there's a lot of R2 in BB-8's personality. I would say that BB-8's maybe a little bit he's a little bit spunkier. I if I can use that word to
Mhm.
describe him, he just has a little bit more, just a touch more fire than R2. Where I feel like R2's always like very in control of the situation,
Mhm.
whereas BB-8 I think is a little like we get some of the best. Some of the best double takes and like reaction shots in the in all of Star Wars, like in all of Star Wars, come from BB-8 when that little
Mhm.
head just like will turn and swivel up. I saw the other day, somebody pointed this out on Twitter, a moment of from Rise of Skywalker, one of the few like incredibly redeeming moments in that movie, which is when they first get to Pasana, and it turns out that it's the festival, the Akiaki festival, right? And 3PO is like going up and he's like, "Oh, like what luck." And everybody like stops and turns, and like it's so easy to focus on all the human characters, in particular Poe, cuz he's given so much sass. Obi-Wan levels of sass, right? As he goes the hand through his hair, like hand on his head, and then over to the hips, and then he turns to look at 3PO as everybody else does. If you watch BB-8 in that moment, BB-8 gives 3PO so much attitude, and it's just like BB-8 is such a wonderful character. But so like we kind of have like these other droids that are great examples, but then R5 coming in, and I think informed by his certain point of view, I short story, in which he basically, um he intention I can't, it's been a while since I read that one, but like I think he like intentionally has the bad motivator so that R2 will get picked because R2 has this mission, and it turns out that like R5 is also, but he's also from the rebellion. And so there's like a moment, like it's a choice
Mm.
that he makes. But I love that we're kind of taking that and going the next level with it, of like R5 doesn't want to go on an adventure. He doesn't want
Yeah.
a
Oh,
mission.
I
He doesn't.
love it.
It's yeah, it's just I think you're right. It's such a great juxtaposition to Mando, who like never refuses the call, right?
Mhm.
Like Mando is always like, what's the next quest? Let's go. Um and Grogu is learning from that, and I think in this episode really kind of comes into his own, I and has his own hero moments, which is really cool. I love that we're finally seeing that progression with his character.
Yeah.
Um and so now we're like rounding that out with R5, and I hope that this is like a permanent thing, that like R5 is now, a part of the tribe, like that these three are going to cruise around, and do their thing. um and honestly, I mean, like we got our own little family going now with Bo-Katan in there. I like listen, I don't know what direction this is headed, but I think there were some conversations about like, is she going to be an antagonist this season?
Mhm. Mhm.
Definitely after last week, she was kind of like, it was like, ooh, can we trust her? What are her motivations, sort of
Mhm.
thing?
Mhm.
And then after this week, it's like,
Yep.
I
Yep.
don't I don't know where we're at now, guys.
I'm with you. I guess we'll get to it in detail later on. But
We will,
man,
yeah.
let me tell you, I had a moment. I was watching with Tina, and the thought occurred to me that yeah, I'm surprised. Like this show is such like a celebration of all things Star Wars, and there aren't really any like romance arcs or anything like that.
Yeah.
Which it's fine. These characters don't need it. It's cool if it services the story, then great. But it like occurred to me then, and then like a few little things happened in this episode. I was just like, huh, okay.
Yeah. There's a thing with Bo-Katan's character where I think um she does not like to project weakness in any way, right? So
Mm-hmm.
even in the moments last week when she's like, yeah, everybody left, she's still forceful about it. She's
Mm-hmm.
still aggressive.
Right.
When really, like, to me, she's like, go wave that thing around and they'll follow you anywhere, right? And she's being very dismissive of Din
Mm.
and all that stuff. And I'm like looking at that going like, oh, this is like this is in retrospect now after watching this episode. I'm like, oh, that was like a cry for help,
Mm.
right? She's saying to Din, like, honestly, she's saying like, don't leave.
Mm.
Like don't go. I'm the only, like, they all left. They all left. And you're gonna take the dark saber. You still got the dark saber? Yeah, I still have the dark saber. Oh, well, then go wave that thing around and they'll follow you anywhere. And what she wants to hear from him is, well, why would I want to go with them? They're obviously disloyal. Right? Like that's what
Mm.
she's looking for. And it's like almost like it's like not to be too like heteronormative gender binary reinforcing and all that sort of thing, but it's almost like the girlfriend like testing you of
Right.
like,
I had the same thought in retrospect.
yeah,
Yeah.
of like I saw a TikTok or whatever the other day that was like it was a woman splaining TikTok, which I get a lot of these because I get a lot of like couples therapy TikToks in my algorithm. um I Stuff about having a healthy relationship with your partner, and it was like a thing of like when a woman turns to you and says like, hey, do you want to go get a milkshake? They're not asking you, the man, and like their partner, do you want a milkshake? What they're saying is, I would like a milkshake, and I need you to also get a milkshake so that I don't feel like a gross monster for eating a milkshake, like for having a milkshake, right? And I think like this was Bo-Katan's moment with Din of like I would like a milkshake, and he was like, so go get a milkshake. I got things to
Yeah.
do, and like left.
Yeah.
And she's like, she's just grumpy about it. So when he comes back, there's like when she thinks that he comes back, we're kind of jumping around in the episode now. But when the N1 is approaching and she sees it, and she comes out, and she is locked and loaded
Mm-hmm.
with her argument
Yep.
because she, like, if she really felt the way that she's about to say she feels, then don't let him land.
Yeah.
Blast him out of the sky. Something, anything, right? Like, but the reality is that she is absolutely 100% attracted to Din Djarin. She saw him with his helmet off, so she knows what his face looks like, and he's Pedro. Come on, guys. Come on. He's Pedro. I'm attracted to him, all right? Like, come on, guys.
He's a very
And
handsome man.
also, like, she knows, hey, guess what? He is loyal as hell to a fault.
Mm.
Right?
He's great with kids.
He's great with kids. He is a formidable warrior. She knows all of this stuff about it. Like, he is checking all the boxes on the Bo-Katan checklist, and she hates him for it. She absolutely despises him for it. I did not think when we sat down to record this episode tonight that this is where we would start the episode, but I'm so happy that I didn't even think this would really be like the thing, because I didn't know if you were going to be like there for it, Joe.
I,
But
I will tell you this. I wasn't going to bring it up because I think the hints are actually very subtle.
Yeah.
But now that you're like really articulating your feelings on it, I'm like, yeah, okay, I was not
Yeah.
wrong to be picking up on this stuff. Cool.
Yeah, I think I was talking with Marie Claire from What the Force earlier today, and I was like it's a very interesting dynamic that happens in this episode. Din can't get anything right at the moment.
She still
He
likes
is
him.
as much like because if you think back to Din in season 1 and season 2, like think back to when we first meet him, right at the very beginning of the first episode. He walks
Mhm.
into that cantina and he just wrecks house, right?
Yep.
Like nobody,
Yep.
he's unstoppable. And then like fast forward to the gorge in the second episode, when they're the Trandoshans attack them, and
Mhm.
he just like again, like it's not happening, plasma rifle done, right? Fast forward to the prisoner. Come on, man. Like this dude is a machine and he's built for one purpose, and that's getting the job done, right? And then he gets to Mandalore, and good news, the air is breathable, everything's fine. Let's go. And they get down there into the mines. He is already a little bit like we're already on shaky ground. Like he manages to take out the six-eyed ape guys, right? But it's a fight. Like it's a fight for sure. Um, I don't think that he was ever like in real danger, but like it was effort. He gets down there and then he falls for it. He like Din Djarin, the best Mandalorian, as we talked about last week, of we've gone to such painstaking lengths to establish that Din is the best of the best. He is the Mandalorian, right? I like to the point that just calls him Mando, right? Like there are other Mandalorians around, but this guy's Mando. You guys, those other guys, they're not Mando. This guy's Mando, and he's our hero, right? But he gets captured by the spider eyeball, right? The General Grievous spider.
The not
Um,
Grievous, yeah.
yeah, and and then even after being rescued, like later on, like he just walks himself off a ledge into the water and almost dies, and it's just like he is not on his game, and to me it's like it's the way I described it was like he's going on blind faith right now, right? Like he's so distracted by his belief system that he's forgetting the most important tenet of his belief system, which is that weapons are his religion. Like he's making really weird, dumb choices and getting himself into all sorts of danger in this episode as he goes into the mines, and then Bo-Katan goes in and is everything that we are used to seeing Din be,
Mhm.
right? Like, and she picks up the dark saber, and we get the reminder earlier in the fight with the apes that uh he can't wield it,
Right.
even though he
Right.
won it by combat, which is supposed to be the way that you get this thing, right? He cannot wield this dark saber. It does not belong with him. She picks it up. She's got the shield on one arm, she's got the dark saber on the other hand, and she just dismantles this thing. Like doesn't break a sweat. Just like it is ballet. Like it is a beautiful thing to behold. Like what a sequence. The choreography is unbelievable. And then she just like gives him back the dark saber.
Mhm.
And I'm just like, buddy, recognize that she just did that. I know you're a little out of it because you were getting your blood sucked out of you by a weird crab droid man, eyeball man, Dianoga in a crab. I don't know what to call this thing. It's a monster. But but still like recognize what is happening here. Because like she came to rescue you, dude. You are the damsel. She is the knight. and she can't, and like that's what I was talking to Marie Claire. I was like, it's like, what's the deal there of like Bo-Katan seems to have no issue, and Marie Claire was like basically like, let me answer your question with a question, like who's the damsel in distress in this episode? And it's like, yeah, okay, like so they it's not that they've switched roles. Din has fallen into this role in this episode of being the damsel. Why? I think that there's a couple of reasons why, but regardless, like she drops what she's doing, like that
Hmm.
pod that cockpit opens and Grogu pops out, and she's like, oh no. And she's like, oh no, my boyfriend. I it's like she's been sitting in her little chair with her notebook, and she's like keeps like writing like B hyphen K plus DD and then putting hearts around it and then crossing it out like like
Yeah,
scratching it out
I
because she's
think that
mad at herself for it.
I think that's a great point that you bring that scene up, because for me that was the first subconscious thing that I picked up on,
Yeah.
because I wasn't thinking about it when it happened. But in retrospect, if she wasn't at least s- maybe it isn't romantic. I think it could be, but she at least respects him and does like him to a certain
Hmm.
degree. I mean, obviously she has these like weird conflicting feelings because of everything that happened with Gideon and the dark saber and all that stuff. But if she really hated him when that happened and she realized she had to go rescue him, I feel like her expression would have been more annoyance and more like, just like, oh, all right, whatever, fine, let's go. Where give me the cord.
Yeah.
There was genuine concern on her face.
And it goes from like that scene, and then we get to Mandalore and she gets out of the ship, and she gets out of the ship with like a little bit of a spring in her step.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
there's an aspect of this of like, okay, let's go rescue him, right? Like there's no like the tension almost disappears at that point, like, and they get down there, and she's sort of got the words of encouragement for Grogu of like, listen, you gotta be brave right now, like you gotta
Yeah.
lead me to him, like let's go. And she's parenting, which like
That
that's
little
Din's
nudge.
job.
That little
That's Din.
that little nudge too,
Yeah,
like kind of protecting Oh man, I loved it.
exactly. She's fulfilling his role because he's not there to do it.
Mhm.
And like there's something there. That's important.
Yeah.
That's important.
Oh
And
man.
I think like even if it's not romantic, there's an aspect here of um like there like everything that she says later about the Mandalore. I mean, she says it in the previous episode as well, stuff about like everything being fractured and all of that sort of thing. Like that was this is like this common thing coming back, this idea that like the Mandalorians are like scattered, like it's broken, it's been destroyed, their culture's been destroyed, they have no community, right? Whether it's the children of the Watch running from place to place, hiding underground, or the Night Owls abandoning her because she didn't get the dark saber, or whatever, right? And Boba wanting nothing to do with any of them, and there are other. And I think that we're going to see later on in this season. I think this season is actually going to be sort of like the gathering of the clans.
Mhm.
I thought that maybe we'd be like sort of like alluding to that, not necessarily building that this season, because I thought this Mines of Mandalore thing was going to be,
Yeah.
it
The
was
whole
going to take at
season.
least half the season to get there, right? And then we would start to gather the clans. But after everything that happened this week, I'm like, oh no, this season is gonna be Din finding the clans and bringing them together, and then
Mhm.
like next season will be like the like uniting them and figuring out how to like return to that community. But like that's like the fact that Din has been on his own with Grogu, and although like they keep gathering allies and that sort of thing for all of these different adventures, um he keeps refusing community, right? Like Grief keeps saying to him like, why don't you stay? Like why you could you and Omera in like the fourth episode of the series is like, just stay here.
Mm.
Like just make a life for you and your little one. Like that's like, isn't that what you're trying to do? Like isn't that what the goal is to keep him safe? Um and then here comes Bo-Katan, and it's like he can't trust anybody with Grogu, right? Like that's kind of his thing. Except that like, well, he trusts Pelly with Grogu, right?
Right.
His Grogu's weird aunt, his weird auntie. And now like here comes Bo-Katan. But here's the thing. We already have the weird auntie energy coming from Pelimato. Where's my little guy, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like and that energy is so different from what we get from Bo in this episode, which is the same energy that we get from Din, where like she is protective of
Yeah.
Grogu.
For sure. Yeah.
She is nurturing in a Mandalorian way of like, hey, you got to be tough, right? But like in her Mandalorian way, she is like being nurturing as she can. There's a it's funny. We're recording this on International Women's Day. So
Hey.
I shout out. I thought it was really cool that this episode dropped on International Women's Day because it's such a fantastic episode for
Yeah.
an awesome female character in Star Wars. I in my experience, there's no such thing as luck, right? But is meant to be. Um, what I'll say about Bo Katan is that like I I hope that she is about to go on a heroine's journey, that like we get that mirrored. I hope that John Favreau is like not just so much in the Joseph Campbell stuff, but has like branched out and is understanding that there's more than just the hero's journey, and there are other phases to life, and there are other aspects of life, and a hero's journey can be taken by a male or a female, and the heroine's journey can also be taken by a male or a female. Poe Dameron goes on a heroine's journey in The Last Jedi, and it's one of the reasons why people hate that storyline. But that storyline is about him coming to terms with a lot of feminine aspects of himself, and the things that he's fighting against, because he's very misogynistic at the beginning of that movie, and he is not by the end of it. Um, and I think that Bo needs to also embrace her feminine. She needs to go on a heroine's journey and embrace her feminine, reintegrate it, because she's been spending her whole life fighting against it, trying to prove something to people. And as a result, she is very unhappy.
Mm.
Right, and that's not, I don't want to imply that like her being romantically linked, because this is
No, I agree. Yeah.
separate.
No.
This is separate from a romantic relationship with Din. This is purely like her own self-development. She needs to reintegrate the feminine with her personality and embrace that in order to be a fully rounded person. I actually wouldn't want to see her enter into a relationship with Din or anybody until she does that, because she's actually not going to be good for anybody until she does,
Yeah.
right? But here's the kicker. I talk about this all the time. Grogu, what's Grogu's main force power, right?
He heals,
He
baby.
heals people. And what is broken in Bo-Katan? Her sister was murdered by Darth Maul, and she hasn't dealt with that. She hasn't healed from it yet. She's still carrying that around, and she's rejecting the feminine in her own life because it reminds her of her sister, who she
Mm.
loved, right? So she's got to deal with that. And Grogu's going to help her by allowing her to reconnect with that part of herself, that part that Satine was so good at, which was, Satine was a good leader not because she was commanding or powerful or forceful, even though she was all those things. Satine was a good leader because of her compassion and her love, right? Like that's what made her the leader of Mandalore that so like that the pacifists got behind, and why she was able to lead them into that era of cultural growth, right? Because she was integrated, she was in touch with that part of herself, but she was also still a Mandalorian, and if she needed to shoot a dude between the eyes, she could, right? Like she was a very fully realized character. And but Bo has been denying that since we first met her alongside Pre Vizsla. She was trying to be something that she's actually not, because she's actually, as we get hammered home over and over and over in this episode, she's a princess, you guys. Like, she's a Disney princess, but she's like, imagine if Jasmine left the palace and never went back.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and over years and years and years of being out on her own, just became hardened, right? And yeah, she'd become a badass, but like, would she be able to fall in love with Aladdin? I don't know, right? Like that's like Bo-Katan is a princess, and she needs to stop running away from that, because she wields the dark saber so incredibly. Like, the best that we've seen anybody use this thing so far, right? And I she could be a really, really powerful, a really good leader. um and I think, I've talked about it before, of like, because we talk a lot about it being like the Knights of the Round Table, right? And Camelot and all of that sort of thing. And I've always thought, like, oh, Din Djarin is Arthur, and I am by no means an expert on Arthurian legend. It's something that, like, I think is cool, but like, I really don't know it well, and I don't know like the supporting characters and stuff. I don't know the archetypes well enough to like to say who's who, sort of thing. Marie Claire knows more about this, and I talk to her about it all the time. And last week we were talking about it, and she's like, "Oh yeah, I see him as more like Percival or Lancelot." And like, I get that. I think that actually, I there might be like some Arthur stuff going on with Bo-Katan, but that she doesn't feel, because of everything that's happened, she doesn't feel like she's worthy to pull the sword from the stone,
Mhm.
right? But I mean, like, there are Arthur stories where, like, he pulls the sword from the stone and he rules for a time, but then like stuff goes wrong and he loses his mojo, has to figure that out again. And that's actually like, that's that middle-aged hero's journey, the which is the same one that Luke goes on in The Last Jedi, which was where like people misunderstand his journey in that story. But because the hero's journey for someone in their midlife is very different from somebody at the end of adolescence, which is where we first see the hero's journey with Luke, right? So it's not going to be the same. He's not going to go out and face down the whole First Order with a laser sword,
Hmm.
except that he does. But he does, but he doesn't, because that movie is brilliant. But yeah, like, I it's interesting because we are dealing with characters who actually are in their midlife. We're dealing with heroes who are in their midlife, with Din and Bo-Katan and Boba Fett, and like, all of these characters are actually like quite old in like classical sort of hero terms, where usually heroes are usually like in their 20s or early 30s, and we're talking about all these characters that are in like their 40s and 50s.
Mm.
Which I love. I think it's fantastic, because I think like it's actually they're good stories for the audience that has been growing up on Star Wars, right? Like, it's where, and obviously it's because that's where the creators that are making these stories are at in their lives, right? Like, that's where Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni are at. So obviously those are the types of stories that they're going to want to tell. They're going to be inclined to tell. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Like, I'm starting to feel more and more like Bo is actually going to be the one. Maybe she's the right one to actually lead the Mandalorians in terms of like a like the actual like sort of head, but that Din is a perfect right hand,
Mhm.
Because he's just so reluctant to lead, which is usually the sign of a good leader, right? Like the best
Right.
leaders,
Yeah.
I often like will refuse leadership. Like they take the responsibility more seriously, so seriously that they don't think they're worthy. But I don't know, or we end up in a world where the two of them lead together. They become like a king and queen of Mandalore, um, of a new Mandalore or something like that. I So yeah, I don't know. It's really interesting. It is all gonna hinge on the next episode and what
Yeah.
happens with
Every everything will be proven wrong in the
yeah.
next episode. None of this stuff is gonna come to fruition at all.
Um yeah, let's talk about it, man. I mean, like, I'm sure that we'll circle back around to some of that other stuff, unless you have something else you want to say on what we just talked about. We can get into the big reveal at the end of the episode.
No, man, go for it. Well,
You want to
you
get
know
into
what?
it?
There is one little thing that I just want to call to that was earlier in the episode, and we saw it a couple times. Man, seeing Sundari City
Mm,
in live action, I we knew it was coming. Obviously, it was in the
yeah,
trailer. Like there were a few like little shots here and there about, it, but like actually seeing the detailed shots and the crazy perspectives and all like the ruined buildings and everything, man, I got chills, and this was kind of the reason I brought up um Saw Gerrera. I honestly don't remember if that was this one or if it's when we were talking about Bad Batch in the other one, but the novelty of seeing these places in live action and these
yeah,
characters in live action has not worn off for me. And I understand like a lot of people feel that it makes the galaxy feel smaller, and like I get it. I get that complaint. But like I don't know what it is about seeing Sundari City in total ruins after seeing it at its like peak majesty in Clone Wars. And it's
yeah,
just like it just really, because we know this place, you know what I mean? Like it's we saw it when it was at its best, and then we saw it go downhill in Siege of Mandalore. We saw it be destroyed, and now we're seeing the aftermath. And I just feel I really felt the weight of when Bo was talking about, Din had said, "Oh, you were right. This place isn't cursed." And like when Bo kind of laments him, is like, "Was I right? Look at this place. It used to be a great civilization. Now look at this place." And it was
yeah,
so like, oh man, like we. It's not just like we have to imagine it. We saw it. We saw this place at its in its heyday, in its peak, and it was a peaceful place. So there were all these politics going on when we first were introduced to it, but we saw it arguably at its best, and just to see it now like this, we feel the weight that Bo feels about it, and I kind
yeah,
of wonder if she almost feels responsible in a way, because obviously everything that happened in Rebels and her rule with the dark saber when she didn't really earn it, but also because of what you mentioned earlier, that she ran away. Maybe if she was here and not out with Pre Vizsla and not out doing all the stuff she was doing, maybe she would have made a difference, and maybe that's part of the reason that, other than everything that happened with Satine and her family. She mentioned her dad. I don't think we ever saw her dad before, but he
no,
died defending Mandalore, and didn't, kind of validated her feelings by res- respecting her father, and with the little "this is the way," even though she's like over the "this is the way" mentality religion of it. You could tell that she kind of appreciated the way that he showed reverence and respect to the idea that her dad died defending this place that's so important to her and important to him too. And it was like another little connecting tissue for the two of them. Like, oh, maybe we do have a little bit more in common than I thought. So I thought that was all of that stuff just to say that Sundari City was so cool to see it like this. And I don't know if you're going to feel the same way. I know this is literally just a pipe dream of something that I wanted, but like the few shots of going around Sundari City, I want a Metroid Prime game of Mando running. I mean, I know this isn't canon, but like somebody running around getting upgrades and exploring the ruins. I want to see so much more of this city. I would love. I feel like a game would be like the great, like the
yeah.
best way to do that. It's just to run around and check out like. I don't know. It's probably because I just beat
What?
Metroid
Yeah,
Prime that I'm in that like, oh, I want to discover all these ruined parts of this big giant
you
connecting map.
you gotta tell me how to deal with that stupid, like, it's one of the last bosses in the game.
Okay.
That stupid it's the one that goes invisible. The space pirate that can go
Oh,
and you got to use the X-ray thing to see, like, it'll go and
yeah.
it'll charge up with the, it's you get the thing to protect you from the oh my god, I can't think of any of the words right now, but I can't beat that thing. You gotta like blast the weak points on it, and then yeah, I don't know, it's got big
Right.
cannons on its shoulders. It's
Yeah.
towards
Yeah.
the
I
end of the
mean, that's
game.
it. You just have to keep. Is this where like there's the like the radioactive stuff on the ground?
The Phazon, yeah, Phazon, that's
Yeah,
what it is. Yeah.
it's literally just a matter of I mean, all I did was uh running around yeah, oh yeah, because doesn't he have like a some kind of thing that like absorbs your
Yeah.
missiles and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Oh, it'll
I
come to me
can't
because I that
yeah.
was the only boss in the entire game I had trouble with too.
Yeah, I can't beat
Everything else
him,
was fine.
and so I put the game down, but I want to go back to it. But
Okay.
anyways,
Okay.
I yeah, this episode had so many like video game moments to it. Anyway, like yeah, it just had a lot of gamey stuff for sure. Um, yeah, all that stuff with Bo and the city, and I love that, like, when we're down, like, we're entering the mines and it's the underground, and it's all like that environment is what we saw in Siege of Mandalore, right?
Mhm. Yep.
Like
Yep.
I
Yep.
with like chasing Darth Maul through like the
Mhm.
tunnels underneath the city, which like at that time we had sort of pegged as like, oh, like the sewer underneath the city, but now it's like, oh no, that's like the entrance to the mines, right?
Mhm.
Like it just like, yeah, good Star Wars makes other Star Wars better, and now the next time I go back and watch that stuff from Clone Wars, I'm gonna be like, oh, there it is, because they nailed the environments, right? Like
Yeah.
they just, it's so true to what we saw in the Clone Wars. It's fantastic. Um, but let's delve into the mines,
Please.
and
Please.
let's dive deep into the living waters underneath Mandalore. I so Din takes off his weapons, he takes off his jetpack, and he he starts walking into the water fully clothed, and drops off a cliff, right?
Yeah. Basically.
And if you're wearing full Beskar and you fall in the water without your jetpack, it's probably not great. Probably not great. And actually, it's interesting because we kind of saw it last week when in the fight with the Crocagator, and one of the Mandalorians falls in the water, and the armorer like runs out there to help them, and I sort of read that as like a because the armor is like, it's always like a bit like a turtle, right? And you flip a turtle on its back and it has a hard time getting up,
Right.
right? Or can't, and could die that way, right? Like, and I feel like with the Mandalorians, it's like that's like the worst situation that you could be in, is that like you're in water in this dangerous situation, and it's like the armor is gonna weigh you down, and you'll just drown in that water, right? And so like Din falls off this cliff, and listen up, all right? If you weren't on board with Bo being in love with Din, or falling in love with Din before, she doesn't miss a beat. She is in that water and jetpacking, like rocketing towards him, trying to find him, and like desperate,
Mhm.
desperate to find him. I and does not give up, and she does find him. And there he is, like basically dying, drowning at the bottom of this lake, this underground cavern. She grabs him, and they're on their way back up. And you just like, you know that this is coming, right? Because there's the whole thing of like, oh, the mythosaurs are
Yeah.
extinct, and all of that stuff, and that light on that eye, and you just like, here we go. And then they get out of the water, and the episode ends. So they have awoken the mythosaur, the symbol of the Mandalorians. It is not a mistake that she tells the story immediately before this,
Sure.
right? And so Mandalore the Great tamed the mythosaur, and that's how the skull became the symbol of the Mandalorians. And so, come on, next week we're gonna tame the mythosaur, right? Like
I feel
somebody's
like
gonna
we have
tame the
to, yeah.
mythosaur. I and yeah, it's gonna the question is gonna be, is it Din or is it Bo? And I think I mean I think I lean towards that it's gonna be Din, that Din will tame the mythosaur.
Right.
But but yeah, that's where we're heading on this next one. Actually, you know what? I just completely broke my own mind. What happened at the end of Book of Boba Fett? What was the last what was one of the last scenes we saw in Book of Boba Fett with the
Uh,
Rancor rampaging? How did we solve that problem?
oh my god. Oh my god. Well,
What if it's neither of them?
no, all right.
You
That,
guys,
I mean,
that
it
happened
it
that
makes sense.
happened live
That was
on this
live.
episode.
It was a live thought.
That just occurred to me.
Wow, that's a fantastic point.
Cause I'm going like, is it gonna be Bo? I don't think that Bo, because she's got so much inner conflict right now, right?
Mm,
And then Din, I'm like, well, Din also has so much inner conflict. Like, had there been some sort of like a resolution to his weird religious fanaticism, and then and then like, well, we're here. It's the living waters of Mandalore, and I'm gonna cleanse myself. But when I come out, like I could have seen like a moment where he goes like he gets in and he goes under and he comes back up and then like has a moment of clarity because of the journey that they've just been on, and he just takes his helmet off, right? Like I could see like that could have been the way that the story could have gone. And then him being like, I did it, I went to the mines of Mandalore, I bathed in the waters, but like you're wrong, right? But that's not what happened. He goes to bathe in the waters and calamity ensues, and now the mythosaur has been awoken. Mandalore is dead, yet at the core the mythosaur is alive, which is to tell us symbolically that Mandalore is not dead, right? Asgard is not a place, it's a people, you guys. And what they need to do is they just need to restore Mandalore, right? Not a coincidence that we also found out this episode that Din comes from Concordia. So he is a Mandalorian. Like he's from the Mandalorian system, right? He's from the moon of Mandalore. So I that's I think that was a pretty big revelation we've kind of glossed over a little bit. Um but yeah, and he basically like says to Grogu like we all come from here, and he's saying to Grogu like you too, like you're a Mandalorian as well. Like this
mm,
is your home as well.
right.
Um and I think that we're gonna get. I mean, Grogu wears armor. He does have Mandalorian armor
He
on. It's
does.
just
His
it's
little
the little
outfit.
his little Beskar chainmail. I think Grogu's gonna tame the Mythosaur in the next episode
My goodness.
because he's the new Tar Vizsla, right? Like there's
Right, yeah. You mentioned that
Mandalore the
before, yeah.
Great and there's Tar Vizsla, and now in the new age of the Mandalorian, so we'll kind of have like and then we have Satine, right? But now like this fourth age of Mandalore will be Grogu, Mandalore the Grogu. I wouldn't it be great if they called him like Mandalore the Lesser because he's
Oh,
small,
the half
like
man.
yeah. That's
Oh,
what.
buddy.
So I don't know, you guys. Are you pro? Are you anti Mandalore the Lesser? I yeah. Man, is it Tuesday night at
Dude,
midnight?
I was just gonna say, man, like,
Oh, I don't know if
it's
I can make it
killing
through
me.
this week. I don't
This
know
is
if I can make it
you
through
know
this week.
you know what the worst thing about doing I mean, we have made this joke before in this observation that, like, when we talked about Bad Batch, we used to do it on, like, what, Monday, and then it would
Yeah.
be the next night is when it would premiere. Right now, it's, like, the longest possible time
Yeah.
before more Mando and Bad Batch.
Yeah, we essentially just watched it.
Nice.
And yeah. Oh my god. Oh my god. I'm so excited. I'm so excited, Joe.
I'm with you,
You
man.
know, like
I'm with you.
Book of Boba Fett, going through that, and it's like it was rough because I there was so much about it that I loved and I wanted to love it, and I do, like, I genuinely do. This isn't just me like being like, well, you gotta be positive about all Star Wars stuff. I genuinely love Book of Boba Fett as an overall thing. It is very, very flawed. I'm not gonna argue with anybody about that fact. I love it in certain instances, like the mods, because of its flaws. I love those guys. And then in other aspects, in spite of its flaws, right?
Mm.
Like why did the Gamorreans need to get like weekly pushed off a cliff? That's such a lame moment
Yeah.
in that episode. But and like it's like there's a lot of that going on in Book of Boba Fett, but the process of talking about that show was so difficult because the discourse was just like deafening, of people just being like this show's dumb. How come Mandalorians in 2 episodes? Like just like every week it was something with people, like they were mad about this thing or the other thing, or this it didn't live up to their expectations. It wasn't what they thought a Boba Fett show was going to be. But and so like I was like, okay, I'm done with podcasting about Star Wars, and I like hung up the Star Wars podcast hat and was like, I'm finished. And then Obi-Wan was incredible from start to finish. I don't care what anybody says, perfect show. And then Andor was like, I I need like anti-anxiety and blood pressure medication after watching it, but like, wow, what an incredible story, expertly told, and everything is like at the highest caliber it could possibly be, except for the fact that there's like 5 aliens in the whole thing, but that's fine.
Mm.
I it's just not very much fun, but it is phenomenal. It's outstanding, right?
Hell yeah.
um And then we circle back around to Mando, and it's like, well, what's this going to be? Is it going to be Book of Boba Fett, or is it going to be Mando season 1? And then it's like, the answer is that it's not really Mando season 1 or 2. Like, that story's done. And it's not Book of Boba Fett either, because Book of Boba Fett was like a transitionary story. And I think that's why it exists, is that it was like, we did it. Season 1 and 2, we did it. He returned Grogu to the Jedi, and it ended in in like the best possible way with Luke, right? So like that story is done. The Mandalorian is finished. And yet the Mandalorian persists because it must, because it is successful, and Disney
Mm.
wants Star Wars on every week in perpetuity. And look, I'm not going to argue with them. Like, do it. But um but this season is so clearly a reset for the whole thing, right? Like it like we're it's just it feels like a completely new show, and obviously there's so many familiar elements, but to me it's just these 2 episodes, it feels like a brand new show. It actually reminds me a lot of, midway through season 3 of Clone Wars, when um they told us like, okay, from here on out everything's in chronological order,
Mm.
right? Like we're gonna there might be an episode here or there that are gonna like flash back to things like that are like sort of service flashback episodes. And we got that with like the rookies stuff. We got the episode that like flashed back all the way to the beginning of their story, but with their training or whatever. but but like essentially everything from that moment forward was chronological, and all of a sudden, like that, at that moment in Clone Wars, the series like really coalesced,
Yeah.
right? They aged Ahsoka up a little bit, they changed her character and matured her a little bit. And then, like that's really when we started getting into like Darth Maul, Mandalore, I Asajj Ventress and her arc. All of that stuff started off like that's when Clone Wars became Clone Wars, and you have to have the first 2.5 seasons in order to get there. But like that's when it really became what that show, when we think back on it, what that show was, right? um and I feel like we're gonna look back in, you know 12 years on this moment, as like that season 3 was really when Mando became Mando. So yeah, I don't know. I'm just excited. I'm excited for more. I think we've got a great story in store for the rest of the season.
It certainly feels that way.
Yeah.
Like, clearly it's ramping up now, and oh my god.
Yeah. At the risk of us ending up going another 2.5 hours, I feel like that's a really great place to stop. So I thank you guys for listening. Like I said, we cannot wait for the next episode. It'll be chapter 19 of The Mandalorian, whatever the title ends up being. It's gonna be the Mythosaur. Come on, guys, it's gonna be the Mythosaur.
Like, what else?
Can you imagine if the next episode is like a hard right turn? They're like, this one's about Boba Fett.
Yeah. Oh my god.
They just leave it. They just leave us hanging for a week. We gotta check in with Cobb and Boba.
It'll be Omega's episode.
Yeah. Oh boy.
Look,
Don't.
I don't know if Tamora Morrison's daughter is an actress, but she would. I think she'd look great as Omega.
There we go.
I think she'd pull it off.
Awesome. Oh, we got a lot to look forward to. We got a lot to think about. And hey, also guys, Bad Batch, firing on all cylinders. Go listen to Rebel Cells. Listen to us talk about that. You really have to, actually, you really need to be listening to both podcasts, because it's like Joe and I finish with Rebel Cells and then we just do this. So it's really just one thing. And then Kyle just leaves because he's a wiener. And he can't hang. Kyle can't hang. He'll never hear this. He'll never be cool, everybody. Don't tell him I said that. No, go tell him I said that. But anyways, that's it for this episode. Thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you, Joe, for joining me and in our revelations about the Mythosaur and Grogu.
Yeah, this was awesome.
And
I'm very excited.
This was a good conversation. Awesome. I look forward to next week. And we will see you guys then. Thank you for listening to Thunderquack Force Perspectives. Our opening theme is composed for us by Christy Carew. Follow Force Perspectives on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ForcePOV, and join us on Discord at thunderquack.com/Discord. Support the show by visiting us at patreon.com/thunderquack to get early access to episodes, leave a rating and review on your favorite podcast service, or buy merch at store.thunderquack.com. Force Perspectives is a part of the Thunderquack Podcast Network.